Well, good evening, everybody. It's my very great pleasure to welcome you all tonight, both our live audience and our online audience. And many of you may know that September is the National Month for Truth and Reconciliation. And we're very honored tonight to have with us Kayak Post-Whiteduck, who will be speaking to us about his personal business, Coyote, and the Ajashki project. I hope I didn't mangle that mispronunciation too badly. So Kayak first started gardening when he was 15. After working in the forestry sector for a few years, following high school, he decided to go back to school and pursued a course as a horticultural technician at Kamosun College in Victoria, BC. After that, he worked in landscaping for a few years until 2016, when he started his own business, Mitagoman Agriculture. And that business entails growing and selling herbal teas. In 2021, he partnered with the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa to create the Ajashki Food Security and Climate Change Learning Center. And that's actually how I came to hear about Kayak, because the CBC had a wonderful article about that Food Security and Climate Change Learning Center that he developed. And the Unitarian congregation, if I'm not mistaken, that's the one right off the Sir John A. Macdonald
now the Kitchissippi Park, Macon.
Yes, now the Kitchissippi Park. Yes, the Western Parkway, for those of us who are longtime Ottawa residents. So Kayak really enjoys learning about plants, gardening, and medicine. His interests are wild food, organic food production, pollinators, and he has a particular obsession with plants in the mint family. And he also just recently purchased a small farm on the Quebec side, which is why, unfortunately, he doesn't have any teas to bring us tonight. So he just brought a couple of samples. But at this point, I'd like you to join me in welcoming Kayak. For those of you online, please place your questions in the chat. And for those in the room, I'm going to be putting this microphone on the stand, and I'll ask you to speak into the microphone. Welcome.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for that introduction. Can everybody hear me all right? All right, perfect. So thank you everyone for having me today. I must say it's an honor to be able to speak at a horticultural society. I'm going to begin. Today I'm going to be speaking about basically two of the jobs that I work. The first one being my tea business, and the second one being the Ajashki project, or the Ajashki Food Security Climate Change Learning Center, but generally I refer to it as the Ajashki project because the other one's rather long. So let's begin. I'm first probably going to talk a little bit about myself. I know Rebecca's given me an introduction, I'm going to talk a little bit how I got into horticulture, and I can pinpoint it all the way back to just one day when I was in high school. I was about 15 years old, and I had a rugby game on a Sunday, but on Saturday night, I decided to stay out very late with my friends. And then when I got back home Sunday morning, I had missed my rugby game, and my dad was at my house. He was not very happy with me letting my team down. So what he made me do was dig a giant sumac tree out of just about where I'm standing in that picture there, and remove it from those bricks that I'm standing on. It was during that time my dad started talking to me. His dad was a farmer, and he started talking, the soil's really nice here. You could probably grow some plants here, some vegetables. So he actually drove me to the store after I was done getting the sumac tree out, and I bought my first packets of seeds that day. They were, I think, string beans, cucumbers, watermelons. I planted my first seeds that day, and I kind of, been planting ever since. My garden's much larger now, though. I actually own a farm, and then my first garden was that lower level that you see in the picture was where my first garden in, and now I own a 79-acre farm. So my garden has been growing in these recent years. As well as I've always been interested in plants through my grandparents on my mother's side. My grandmother is a respected elder in my community of Kitigan-Zibi, and she's always kind of taught me about the plants and the medicines that her father had taught her. And then my grandfather was a lumberjack, and he cut down a lot of trees. And so I learned a lot about trees from him. So that kind of also kind of helped kick off my horticultural journey. Yeah, so after high school, I took a few years off and did went on some adventures and did some forestry work. But then I decided I wanted to go to school for horticulture. So I applied to a horticulture technician program at Camosun College in Victoria. I wanted to go to Victoria because the climate is, well, it's a zone 9B there. And yeah, tons of plants that I haven't seen since I've left Victoria. As well as I think that picture where I'm with two of my classmates, that was taken in like mid-February. So we were able to garden all season, all year long there. So that was pretty great. So when I came back to Ottawa after I finished this course, I started a business, Mitigamin Agriculture, where I started growing herbal teas. And then when I did that, I decided I need to learn a little bit more about what I'm doing. So I went to a program at Algonquin College in Ottawa that's no longer offered, sadly, but it was called Tea Sommelier. Basically learn everything, how to produce tea well. And then after that, I went to another college in the area that's actually also no longer around, called the International Academy of Health Education. It's called something else now, but I took a course there called Western Herbalism because I realized some of the herbs I'm working with, I really should know what I'm doing. So I'm safe in selling herbs to people, and I'm not making anybody sick or selling herbs that I shouldn't be selling, and just making sure that I know a lot about the plants that I'm working with. Yeah, so that includes all my formal education, and these three programs really helped me to develop what my business is today with KOT and my herbs. So this next slide is just about my work experience before I started my herbal journey as KOT. So the first picture you see there on the left is me tree planting way back maybe about 12 years ago. In my time of tree planting, I planted over 250,000 trees in forestry blocks in Alberta. As well as a picture on the right of me picking pine cones. Of course, to plant trees, you need to make the trees first. So you go and pick the pine cones. The pine cones get sent to the tree nursery, the silviculture nursery, and then they later, a year or two later, get sent to the tree planters to plant. So I've done tree planting, pine cone picking, and I've also worked in a few nurseries. And one of the nurseries I worked at is a silviculture nursery. Meaning that they took the cones, they start the trees, and then send them out after. So I kind of completed the whole forestry work of seeing the seed collection to the planted tree. As well as I also worked in a nursery in Victoria, BC called Novus Plants, which was a wholesale tree, shrub, and perennial nursery. And then once I moved back to Ottawa, I worked in a local a retail nursery called Richie's Feed and Seed, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And yeah, so I've kind of done all different kinds of nursery work, the three different kinds of nurseries that are common. As well on the side in the last couple of years to kind of help me sustain myself, I've been doing landscaping or garden maintenance for clients in the Chelsea and Wakefield area. But now that I have a farm, I'm trying to move more into agriculture instead of working for horticulture, because I guess in the end, I'd rather be working on my garden than other people's gardens. And then my last work experience I like to talk about is I designed a field guide for the Kitigan-Zibi forestry sector in my community. They have a forestry sector that takes care of all the trees and the plants in the wilderness. So I designed a forestry guide of about 100 different species, plant species that are important to the Algonquin Anishinaabe people, from food to medicine to at-risk plants. Yeah, and then eventually in 2016, I started my own business called Mitigamin Agriculture. It means acorn in Algonquin. That is my logo up there. And then the picture with the gnome is kind of all the products I sell. You can find me on the internet at www.mitigomin.ca or on Facebook, Mitigamin Agriculture, and the same for Instagram. Yeah. I have an online store on my website. However, I have recently moved to a large farm that I'll talk about in a minute. And with that move, my production kind of came to a standstill because I guess it's a lot of work getting a farm together. But I'm getting there, and I'm building a tea processing facility or herbal processing facility right now. And I'm trying to get that done before the first frost. So that's what I'm working on at the current moment. So yeah, a lot of people always ask me, well, how did you get into the whole herbal tea business? And again, I can pin back to 1 year, the year I got home when I came back to Ottawa. I moved home from Victoria. I've always been obsessed with mint. I know mint's obviously a very easy plant to grow. There's a lot of really awesome cultivars that you can get, things from ginger mint to chocolate mint to apple mint, a bunch of different lovely cultivars to use that all have unique flavors. And so I planted where I'm standing in this picture is actually the first bed I planted in an acre that eventually became my whole garden. So I planted 9 different types of mint plants that year. And then I went back out west to go pine cone picking for a month. And then I ended up doing a little adventure after that. And so when I got home, I was broke again. And I was like, oh, I need some money. And that's when my mom suggested, like, well, why don't you sell some of that tea that you grew? Because I harvested it and dried it out. And she's like, well, try selling some. Maybe you can make a little money. So that's what I did. I put a little advertisement out on my Facebook and said, hey, anybody want to buy some tea that I grew? And I ended up selling about $200 worth of tea that year, which is great. And then it was from there where my mom actually suggested, like, hey, well, why don't you do this for a business? And at first I was skeptical, like, well, I know who would buy mint? It's one of the easiest plants to grow. But as it turns out, there's a lot of people out there who buy dry mint. Yeah, so that's kind of how it started. And then quickly after that, my business started growing. So that first picture there of me holding that giant check is a competition that I did called the Powwow Pitch competition. It was basically an elevator pitch competition for your business where you get up and you have 3 minutes to speak about your business. And yeah, I did that competition in 2018 and took home the grand prize of $5,000 and that giant check. Which was really awesome. And that really helped to kickstart my business in a very huge way. It was right after that where I started having people been asking if they could retail my products. So I started getting my products into stores after that. And yeah, that second picture that you see there on the right is of my garden before I moved to my farm. So before I moved to my farm, I had about an acre garden. It was on my mom's property in her backyard in Chelsea, Quebec. And she allowed me to turn that whole, it was an acre, but it was surrounded by trees and kind of off out of the way from the house. So I ended up turning it all into my garden where I grew all my herbal teas. And it was only 1 acre, and I ran off that 1 acre from 2016 to, I guess, pretty much this year. Yeah, so 1 acre served me well, but now I've moved on to greener pastures, I'll say, which leads me to my new farm. So my new farm is located in Farleton, Quebec, which is about maybe 45 minutes north of Ottawa. And yeah, it was a great deal for me. It's not too far from my parents' place or any of my friends' place. And I absolutely love it here. It's 79 acres, the farm, with about 13 acres of tillable land. And so it's allowed me to do a lot of opportunities that I couldn't do at my mom's place. Particularly speaking with trees. At my mom's place, I didn't have any room for trees. And now at my new farm, I can plant any kind of tree I want. So I've been planting a few tree species that I'll be using for my herbal teas in a couple of years once they start to grow. As well as on the property, kind of in that first picture, you see that tree line in the far back behind the fields. Well, behind that is this giant raspberry patch. So I've actually been able to start harvesting raspberries, and eventually going to start using raspberries and other fruits in my teas. And the last opportunity that it really worked out great for me is now I can start to have animals. As you know, as a farm, you need to have animals to complete the cycle of nutrients. And so right now I have 26 chickens. And we're also looking at getting a donkey and a few ducks for pest control. And so it's really opened a lot of opportunities for me, this new farm, and I'm super stoked. The picture on the right there is what I'm calling my tea facility or the facility. Basically, that's where I'm going to do all the drying and the processing and the packaging of my herbs. That's what it looks like right now. But I am working on it. I'm insulating it. I'm putting dehumidifiers in it. I'm putting air conditioners on it and heating. So eventually it's going to be quite something where I'll be able to dry out tons and tons of herbs every year and lots at a time. It doesn't look too big in that picture, but it's actually a fairly decent sized building. So yeah, that's my project of right now. I'm trying to get it all done before the first frost happens. And the first frost up in Farlton usually happens about a week or two before Ottawa. So I'm at a race against time right now, but it's coming along, and I'm happy to say that it's almost done. So yeah, now I get to the part that I think most people here like to hear about, which is basically the herbs that I use for herbal tea. So when I choose the herbs that I use, there's two factors that I need to look at before it can become something that I sell. The first one is safety first. There's a lot of unsafe herbs that you can use for herbal tea that are not exactly safe to be drinking every day, So this is some herbs that I'll maybe grow for myself, but I don't sell them because obviously I don't want to make anybody sick or any of my products or cause any medical conditions or anything like that. The second factor is taste. Of course, if I'm selling herbal teas, I got to have something that tastes good. I have been studying a lot of different plants to use from herbal teas, and I found out quite a lot of them. But there's a lot of plants out there, particularly speaking about native species that don't taste really good. One that comes to mind is turtle head. I've tried making tea with turtle head. It's a safe herb you can use, but it's extremely bitter and it doesn't really taste very nice. So obviously, as a business, I got to make sure my product tastes nice, or people aren't going to want to buy it. So with the herbs that I use, I kind of split them into 4 categories for this presentation. The first one being mint varieties. I have kind of an obsession with mint, so I sell about 12 different kinds that I'll talk about in a minute. Mint family aromatic herbs. There's a lot of great tasting teas just in the mint family itself, and I'm discovering new ones almost every year. Other herbs, so just other herbs that don't belong in a category, and native species. Yeah, so let's begin with my favorite ones, and that's mint varieties. So basically, I've learned a lot about mint in the last little while. And all the ones I have up there's about a dozen different kinds. These are all the kinds I sell. There's plenty of different kinds of mint nowadays. In my research, I've discovered that there is about 13 to 24 different kind of natural native mint species. They say 13 to 24 because there's mint hybridizes really easy, and there's some areas where there's 2 different varieties that are in the same area and they've hybridized. So they can't exactly pinpoint how many natural kinds of mint in the world because there's so much just slight variations in the natural kind. But some of the research that I read suggests there's 16 different kinds of native mint in the world. And in this list, the only native kind of species of mint is that first one, spearmint. Yeah, that originally came from Europe. One of my best sellers is, of course, peppermint, and that is actually a hybrid between spearmint and watercress mint. Yeah, and then so the other species I sell are Moroccan mint, ginger mint, silver mint, mojito mint, apple mint, orange mint, grapefruit mint, sweet lemon mint, banana mint, and pineapple mint. So those are the kinds that I use. There's like hundreds of different kinds of cultivars of mint. I'm sure many of you have some of these growing in your garden. Yeah, I think there's maybe even over 1,000 different kinds of like registered cultivars of mint. But these are the ones I use. I also try to choose stuff that will sell nice, and people are always interested in fruity herbs, as I found in my recent years of selling them. So that's why I use all of them. And then that picture on the left is a picture of peppermint in my garden. All right, on to the next section, which is another favorite of mine, mint family. If I had to choose a favorite family of plants, mine would definitely be Lamiaceae or the mint family. So yeah, the herbs I use are anise hyssop, bee balm, or also known as Oswego tea when you drink it as a tea, named after the Oswego Mohawks, lemon balm, pineapple sage, catnip, and holy basil. So yeah, what I like about a lot of these herbs, specifically anise hyssop and bee balm, is they're very pollinator friendly herbs. And you grow anise hyssop, you'll see like multiple bees on one plant, and sometimes even butterflies. It's a crazy the amounts of bees you can see on one plant, especially with anise hyssop. Bee balm and lemon balm as well are definitely a favorite amongst the pollinators, and I do try to do all I can to help out the pollinators. Of course, they're very important, I'm sure, as you all know. Another great thing about a lot of these is a lot of these herbs can just be found in your gardens. I'm sure some of you have them in your ornamental gardens at home, and you'd actually be surprised about how many people buy these herbs off me when they have them growing in their garden themselves. And they'll be like, oh, anise hyssop, I'll try a bag of this. I didn't know you can grow it. I have some in my garden. Yeah, they're paying me, $5 to $13 to buy my stuff, which works great for me. But if people just knew how to process their own herbs, they wouldn't have to buy from me. But then I guess I'd be out of business. So, so yeah, on the right there is a picture of anise hyssop, one of definitely my favorite mint family plants. Yes, so we'll go on to the next slide of other herbs. There's herbs that don't fall in any particular category. So some of these are aromatic, some of these are not. The first one on there, lemon verbena, is a incredibly great tasting tea. It's probably my best seller. And yeah, it's just beautiful. It's actually the picture on the farthest left with the ladybug on it. That's what lemon verbena looks like. The second one is lemongrass. And then going down the list, there's stinging nettle, ginger, vanilla grass, fenugreek, chamomile, shisho, linden, and Greek mountain tea. So most of these are plants I sell right now. I've just started growing chamomile and shisho and linden and Greek mountain tea. There are a bit of learning curves. This one I've had to try to grow chamomile on a large they're trying to grow lots of chamomile. I found it incredibly difficult, even though it's a very drought tolerant plant. And then things like linden, so linden tree. So I've just actually planted a few of them. The flowers is what you can use, but I have to wait for my trees to get a little bigger before I can actually use them to monetize them. So yeah, many of these plants in this category are super medicinal. Particularly stinging nettle. When I think of, and many herbalists like myself, when you think of medicinal plants, stinging nettle is probably one of the first one that comes to mind. And that brings me to my last section of native species. So these are all plants that I don't grow on my farm myself. I go up north near my community of Kitigan-Zibi to harvest all these. And when I do, I always go far into the bush to get them, farther away from any road or highway or any kind of camp like that, the better. So yeah, these include things like Labrador tea, raspberry leaf, spruce tips, sweet fern, balsam fir, wild chamomile, which is actually something that you can't find in the bush. You actually have to go in. It's actually a really hard plant to get to be able to sell it, because where it grows is in disturbed areas. And generally you'll find them in like driveways or along sidewalks, stuff where maybe people walk their dogs and things like that. So I actually haven't sold any wild chamomile yet, because the little that I found that I'm like, yes, this isn't a safe spot that I feel okay consuming it. Well, I only found little bits of it, so I keep it for myself. And surprisingly, for a plant that's considered a weed, it's actually kind of hard to grow. So that's something I'm still experimenting with. And then the last one on that is chaga. Chaga is obviously not a plant, it's a mushroom. And this is something I only sell upon request. The reason being is that it's gotten a lot of popularity in the last couple of years. Specifically in some areas, including Southern Ontario. A lot of herbalists are now reporting that the chaga is being a lot harder to find because people are going out and harvesting it like crazy. Yeah, and people, I guess, are unaware of the life cycle of chaga. So the life cycle of chaga, people take a little bit, but basically for chaga to reproduce, it has to kill the host tree, which is a birch tree. So that tree actually has to kind of die before the chaga can reproduce. So I guess that's part of the issue. But obviously, over like many plants and at-risk species, over harvesting is generally the hugest issue with it. So this is why I don't sell it unless somebody specifically asks me, hey, I need this medicine, can you go and get it? Then I will sell that. So I generally do not use any at-risk, and if I do, I'll cultivate them myself. And I always practice wild crafting. So that means, not going into an area and taking every single plant that you can find. Taking as much. In Anishinaabe culture, we have the saying of when you go harvest medicine or animals or anything, you're supposed to leave enough for the next 7 generations. So that's what I do. Generally with some plants, it's a little more of an issue. You're talking about golden seal or any of the particular medicinal herbs that are at risk now. And then there's things like balsam fir. Well, there's definitely no shortage of balsam fir on this earth right now, or spruce tips. So I'm pretty more lenient with harvesting as much as I want with that. But of course, as an Anishinaabe person, ethical wild crafting is a must. And I'll always teach anybody who goes into the forest to wild craft anything about the practices of ethical wild crafting. And this last slide about my teas here is just about the blends that I've made. So I've by no means an expert herbal blender, but I've come up with a few blends that I'm happy with. In each of them has a theme. So the first one's called Extreme Lemon Blend, which is basically just all the lemony or some of the lemony herbs all blended together. That includes lemon balm, lemongrass, lemon verbena, and sweet lemon mint. I find it works actually great because although they're all lemon flavored, they all have different subtle flavors that are different. Some are more sour, some are more sweet. So you get a blend of all lemon. It's the overall taste of lemon followed by a bunch of different aftertaste of all these 4 herbs that you see here. The next one I made is called Fruit Salad Blend, which is basically, I was just trying to blend a bunch of different fruity like herbs together to give, when you drink the tea, to almost like you're eating a fruit salad with a bunch of different fruity flavors in it. And the herbs I ended up using for it are lemon verbena, pineapple sage, raspberry leaf, apple mint, and banana mint. And then these next 2, I only started making them not last year, 2 years ago. And I started naming my blends at this point after some of my favorite songs. So In the Evening Blend is actually a Led Zeppelin song where I chose it. And like the name suggests, it's a tea that you would drink in the evening before going to bed or to help you relax at the end of the night because of the herbs that are in it. Anise hyssop, catnip, and lemon balm are all known as the kind of sedative herbs. Catnip especially being a very strong sedative herb, so one that will help you to sleep. The next one I made is called Morning Dew Blend. So again, that one's one of my favorite Grateful Dead songs. And like the name suggests, is one that you would want to drink in the morning. I personally don't often drink tea in the morning, but I've kind of made it so that it's not something that's not going to make you tired and maybe even help you out throughout your day. So its ingredients are mojito mint, stinging nettle, holy basil, and a little bit of Siberian ginseng, for a little kick in the morning. And then my last one is just called Forest Blend. Like its name suggests, it's just all herbs that you would find in the forest. So it's all native species. It contains raspberry leaf, Labrador tea, sweet fern, and balsam fir. Yeah. Now I'm just going to touch on a little bit of the difference between using cultivars for medicinal tea and cultivars for tea and medicinal herbs for tea. So generally, when you talk about herbal medicine, you kind of disregard cultivars as something you'd use in medicine. There is only one cultivar or hybrid plant that is very commonly used in herbal medicine. Does anybody want to guess what it is? No. Okay, I'll tell you. It's peppermint. It's the only common hybrid plant that is commonly used in herbal medicine. And I would even say even more so than its parent plant, spearmint. For anybody who doesn't know, spearmint, peppermint is derived from spearmint. Spearmint is a lot lighter in taste, and it's also a lot lighter in medicinal properties. This makes spearmint better suited for kids if you want to use it on kids, rather than peppermint is better for adults. So yeah, generally, if you're using plants for medicinal purposes, you use straight plants, no cultivars. When I'm growing plants to sell, it's not always easy growing certain straight plants. I've tried growing Monarda fritulosa or wild bergamot or wild bee balm. And I'm sure as many of you here will know, bee balm loves powdery mildew, or I should say powdery mildew loves bee balm. And anytime you see even a little speck of powdery mildew on my bee balm, well, then that whole plant is not profitable for me, and I've wasted all season weeding it. So this is where I kind of started to use a little bit more cultivars. I've started to find the Monarda didyma, the red bee balm, a little more less susceptible to powdery mildew. So I've had better luck with that. So I've been using that. And I've also recently been introduced to, I forget the cultivar or species name for it, but it's a Monarda species that is way more resistant to powdery mildew than any of the other bee balms. So they do fluctuate in taste too, is the only thing. So the wild bee balm or Monarda fritulosa is a little more sweet in taste compared to the Monarda didyma, what you'll see in that picture on the left, is a little more peppery. So I do give up on the taste a little sometimes, but you know, I want to try to grow plants that I can sell. And powdery mildew, well, you know, it costs me money, so that's why I've used that. And then on the right there, we have, of course, when we talk about medicinal herbs, we think of stinging nettle, a weed to most, but a very powerful medicine to anybody who wishes to consume it. I've also been told by herbalists that, you know, stinging nettle actually is medicinal. Just the sting of it helps with certain ailments. I can't remember if it was arthritis or something. I'm not sure how true that is. So I wouldn't suggest just going out and stinging yourself with a bunch of stinging nettle. And yeah, so now I'm just going to talk a little bit about my drying and processing practices. Pretty straightforward what I do. So basically the first step is to harvest it all and give it a good wash. How do I say this? I'm an operation that doesn't use pesticides or any herbicides or anything. I'm working on getting my organic certification. It's quite a long process, so I can't actually say that I'm organic farm yet, although that's what I'm striving to be. So yeah, I wash it because, you know, there's usually a lot of bugs on some plants more than others. On that picture on the left there, you'll see apple mint on the table, and that's definitely one plant that I have to look underneath almost each leaf to make sure there's no caterpillars or anything. And then some things more like lemon balm or peppermint are generally a lot more free of bugs. But I take a sprayer hose and spray all my plants down to try to make sure I'm washing any insect off of that, because yeah, you definitely don't want to be selling insects when you package your teas. And then the next step is bring it into my drying room. So basically, this is before I had my farm, but I basically have a bunch of racks in the room, and I do a method of drying called bundle drying, which is pretty straightforward. You grab after your plants, you just put them into a bundle and then hang them upside down. The reason why you hang them upside down is because it helps the oils before they dry out to drip into the leaves, and that's what we want. And then once the plants are dry, which usually takes anywhere between 1 to 3 weeks. Some people, you can do it a lot quicker, But I always want to make sure my plants are 100% dry, because the second somebody buys a bag of my tea, opens it up and finds a bunch of mold in it, well, that's obviously not good for my business. So I make sure my plants are 100% dry, like super brittle. And that's when I take all the bundles down, and then I basically strip all the leaves off. This is, I believe, orange mint and apple mint together that I've harvested recently. And yeah, I take them down, and some people, some herbalists or people who sell herbs will actually take their herbs and crush them down into, so that they're more powdered, or even like crush them to, yeah, basically they are just a powder. I don't do that. I find it releases a lot of the aromatics to it. So I never powderize my herbs. I try to leave them as full leaf as possible. Specifically speaking about lemon verbena, it's one of my favorite herbs, so I don't even crush that at all. I literally just strip the leaves off and sell it like that. And if people want, they can crush it when they open the bag. The reason for being is because I believe it's one of the best tasting herbs, and I want to try to have the best tasting lemon verbena, so make mine, the best about being the best, right? Yeah, and then so then after that, I take all the herbs that are stripped and I put it into my bags and my packaging. I try to have as earth-friendly packaging as possible. It's a huge learning curve, and I'm still trying to do this. These bags are omnidegradable, meaning that they have enzymes in them that break down once they touch water or soil, which is great. But I'm looking for bags that are completely compostable, and I found some. They're just very expensive to buy, and I want to buy them. It's on my to-do list, but I have to make a little bit of money first, so then I can eventually have packaging that's completely compostable. The goal is to be able to take my packaging and throw it out where you throw all the tea after you made the tea, what's left, called the mark. You take the mark and you can dispose of the packaging with the leaves as well in your home compost. Is kind of my end goal for packaging. But yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky to find the packaging, and what's even more trickier is finding labels to put on the packaging that are completely compostable. I have found one company in the States, but the prices of the stickers are about 10 times the amount that I'm paying for my stickers right now. But it is something I'm working on, and hopefully I'll eventually get there. Yeah, so this will be the last slide about my teas. So I want to talk a little bit about traditional Anishinaabe teas. So on the right there, you can see a birch bark basket full of water. So prior to European contact, there were no pots to boil water in. So as Algonquin people, we always use birch bark for everything, including boiling water. I've never actually done this, but it looks like a complicated process, and I bet you there was a lot of oopsies trying to do that, because anybody who knows about birch bark, if it touches a flame, well, it goes up in flames pretty quickly. But that's how I was doing, and that would have been how my people used to make their medicines back in the day, by boiling water in the birch bark. And then on the left there, there's a pot of cedar tea. Now, cedar is one of the 4 sacred medicines in Anishinaabe culture. It makes an okay tasting tea, I'll say. It's quite bitter. One thing, if you ever want to try making cedar tea, it's great. It has a lot of medicinal properties, but there's 2 things you have to consider. One is that you never boil it. You only steep it on a low temperature. And 2 is that you consume only very little about it. So maybe a cup, maybe 2 if you really need it, per day, and not for long periods of time. Reason being is it contains a chemical called thuone, and that's toxic in large doses. So it's medicinal in small doses, and large doses is toxic, and that's actually a very common theme in a lot of plants. Cedar tea also can be used topically for some ailments, as well. It was traditionally baths were made with cedar tea, and they still do that in many ceremonies today. So yeah, so I just want to give you a little blurb about traditional Anishinaabe ways of making teas. Yeah. So that was all I'm going to talk about my teas. The next part of this presentation is about my second job, basically, which is the Ajashki Food Security and Climate Change Learning Center. We started in 2020. I partnered with the First Unitarian congregation because they were interested in making a special reconciliation project. And so they found me, and how they found me. Oh yeah, it's through somebody I know. At the time I was serving on the Canadian Agricultural Youth Council, and I was the only Indigenous member of the council. And so that's why they thought I'd be a good fit for this. So yeah, basically what we do is we employ Indigenous participants to come and basically it's a skills development / learn to work program. So they're Indigenous participants age 16 to 30 years old. And basically we teach them how to grow food, teach them how to prepare food, just general horticultural skills, and just general skills in general. Many of them are very young, so some have never picked up a drill before. So not only do they plant and take care of all the gardens, but they build a lot of the gardens themselves. So we have kind of two gardens at the First Unitarian congregation. It's on Clearly Ave. So on the left, you see myself with our indoor garden. So we have, the picture was taken at a time when we only had 3. Now we have 5. Basically the vertical gardens, and they're great. I love them. We can grow produce all year long, which is great because we're a food security program, and obviously in the winter people are a lot less food secure. From it, we were basically able to eat salads every day. And then of course we have outdoor gardens where we do your typical vegetable garden. And there's one of our participants working in one of the gardens there. Aside from this stuff, we also do random things, particularly art projects is something we've been doing a lot recently. These the participants of the program, I came up with the term future food warriors. The reason for that is we're hoping once they come to our program and learn how food skills, plant identification skill, wild harvesting, is that they'll go out into the world and help fight against food insecurity. Food insecurity is a huge issue, and it's only been getting worse the last couple of years with COVID and climate change worsening. Our future food warriors are paid $18.60 an hour, which is the Ottawa livable wage. So they do all the planting and all the maintenance of the garden, and I just supervise. You can see there's a picture of me supervising in the corner right there. And so they're allowed to take home all the most of the produce that we create or that we grow. As well as we also do lunch programs where we use our food that we grow to create lunches. So you can see on the left there's one of our future food warriors with a huge handful of looks like lettuce or green or kale. None of them really like kale, but I'm always trying to force it on them because I love kale. It's super nutritious. And when we talk about food security, I think we always need to talk about nutritional food security. It's quite important. The next one is another participant just planting a shade garden. So generally focus on growing food, but we do also just general horticultural things just to help them develop skills, and who knows, maybe they'll become a landscaper one day or something. And then the last picture is of us planting trees. So we're also a climate change project where we focus on climate change and specifically how agriculture and food systems affect climate change and vice versa. So here we are planting trees because we try to do a little bit of climate action where we can. It's not overly too much a handful of people can do, but we try plant trees, send letters to members of parliament and things like that. That's how we participate in some climate action. So primarily we're a food security program. What that means is we basically grow a lot of food. Many of our participants are food insecure people. They're generally young Indigenous people who don't have a lot of money. So we have a lunch program where we make lunch and then everybody eats. We also do workshops. So this workshop is something that we did as a canning workshop. Basically, we taught them how, because we can teach them to grow all the food you can, but if you can't teach them how to produce a food that you can eat, well, then it doesn't really do you any good. So we do canning workshops where we preserve some of the food that we grow so we can have them in the winter. As well as on the picture on the right here, we do a lot of food donations with any excess food we can. So anytime there's food that's not being eaten, we package it up and send it to the Parkdale Food Center, or specifically Minowisini, which is a branch of the Parkdale Food Center, but it's in a different location. Yeah, and we have quite a good working relationship with the Parkdale Food Center. So one thing we do for them is every Thursday, I go to that location of Minowisini, which is again a branch of the Parkdale Food Center, and I pick up their compost, like all the food that they couldn't sell or couldn't give away because it's not fit to give away. I take it and I bring it to our compost bins at the Ajashki project, and I compost it there, so we get free materials for free greens to add to our compost bin. And what that allows them to do is, otherwise, if I wasn't coming and taking it every Thursday, then they have to pay to have it taken away. If they're using their money to pay compost taken away, well, that's less money going to buy food for people who couldn't really use it. So that's one way they helped us out, one way I helped them out, or we helped them out. One way they helped us out is showed you the slides about the grow towers. So those grow towers were loaned to us for free from the Parkdale Food Center, and they're great. I absolutely love them. And yeah, one of those systems brand new is like over $2,000, and we have 5 of them. So it's like $10,000 worth of growing systems right there. So yeah, and we also, do what we can to help each other out. So yeah, the Parkdale Food Center is great. I really believe in what they do, and yeah, try to help them out as much as possible. So yeah, the Ajashki garden where we grow our food is what's registered as a heart garden. So heart gardens are an organization based around, I forget their name. They're based around truth and reconciliation. And what they did is they put a call out for people to make heart gardens. And what these heart gardens are just gardens to commemorate the victims of residential schools, either the survivors or the ones who didn't survive and who were found at the residential schools. So ours is a registered heart garden, and what we've done is we've decided to honor the children at the Kamloops residential school. I'm not sure you might know, but there's a few years ago there was 215 unmarked graves found of children at that residential school. So what we did is we planted 215 orange marigolds, for each of the childs that were lost, lives that were lost there. You can only see about 8 in the picture, but in that area there's actually 215. So yeah, that's one thing we've done for registered our heart garden. And then we've also made the sign which says Ajashki Ode Kitagan, which means the Ajashki heart garden. And that again is a piece of art that is painted by one of our future food warriors. And it's a sign that's at the front of our garden. If you come to the church, it's right at the front. Yeah, so another thing we try to do in this program is kind of teach about culture and language. So many of these Indigenous youth are kind of, I don't say displaced from their communities, but some don't even know much about their culture. Their parents were removed from their communities, or they've moved down here and don't really know too much. So one thing we do is we started doing cultural workshops. The one in the top left corner there is a guy from my community named Pinnock Smith, and he's like a bush craftsman, I guess is what I describe him. He is somebody who grew up like deep in the bush, and he knows how to make kind of any kind of canoes, paddles, snowshoes, birch bark baskets, anything that was traditionally used, he can make it. And so that's us doing a workshop where we were all making birch bark baskets, which of course was important to harvest our berries and such way back in the day. We've also started learning a bit about language. So our group at the Ajashki project is kind of a mixed bag of people. I myself am Algonquin Anishinaabe, but we have Inuit, Métis, Mohawk, Ojibwe, and 2 different kinds of Cree people. So obviously we can't learn all those languages. But I started teaching a bit about Anishinaabe, which is all those words that you see on the wall in the picture on the bottom left. And so I'd choose an Algonquin word of the day, and then I'd teach it, and it would go up on the board. As well as kind of happened this year is we've kind of partnered with an organization called Inuktitut, which helps does a lot of stuff for the Inuit community here in Ottawa. And yeah, we started getting a lot. They do a job placement, so we started getting a lot of our people, a lot of our employees from Inuktitut, meaning we started getting a lot of Inuit people. So what we started doing is we also made another wall for Inuktitut, which is the language of the Inuit people. I don't have a picture of it, but there's a wall right adjacent to that one that we have a bunch of Inuktitut words on the walls to help them learn their language. As well as we started inviting elders to come to our program so that people can learn from elders. We've got an Inuit elder who's come a couple of times so that the Inuit participants can learn from him. And then this man here is sitting right beside me is a guy named Albert Dumont. He's from my community. And he was actually he's an elder from my community. He went to residential school, and he specifically was a huge part of getting the Kitchizibee Mekong name change from the Sir McDonald Parkway. He led a lot of that. So yeah, he was pretty inspirational to me in my community. So yeah, basically, this is my last slide here, but it's just how like Ajashki runs. Basically, I myself an employee, and then all of the Future Food Warriors are also employees. And then we have what's called our circle of support, which all these ladies in the picture are part of our circle of support. Most are members of the First Unitarian congregation, and they offer, basically this program wouldn't run if it wasn't for them. They do kind of all the background work. They write our program is funded through grant writing as well as donations from members of the congregation and some from outside the congregation as well. So yeah, they make everything behind the scenes run. As well as just First U in general has really helped take this program take off. So our garden is right behind the church, and we also have some rooms inside the church that we operate in, and they've let us do all this for free, as it's a special reconciliation project where others who use this building are actually renting space in it. So yeah, if it wasn't for these volunteers and First U congregation, we wouldn't be able to run this project. And I think it's been a great project so far. I really feel like we made a difference in the lives of not just only the people, the Future Food Warriors who come to work at this project, but just generally people who are food insecure in the Ottawa area as well, with donations and doing what we can. So yeah, that's my presentation. Kitchi Miigwech for having me here today. It's been a real honor, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed for that, Kayoki. Are you open to taking a few questions?
Yes, I love taking questions.
All right. So Robin, can I ask you if we had any questions on the YouTube channel? And while Robin is checking that, do we have any questions in the hall here? I do have a question for you. I noticed after I had looked at it for a while, I realized that coyote is actually a pun. And I wondered if you had that in mind, and is there a trickster element to you or your company?
A little bit. So my original idea was to be a coyote, like the animal coyote. So coyote is what I originally wanted, but when I went to go look up that name, it had already been taken legally, so I couldn't do that. So I kind of did the next best thing and just used KO, which is the first part of my name, to it to add to it. So that's kind of where that's basically where the name came from. I've gotten pretty good. A lot of people seem to enjoy it, so
I enjoy it. I think that's great. And you mentioned the tree guide that you'd prepared for your community, and both myself and the lady sitting next to me kind of perked up and went, wow, that sounds really interesting. Is that something that might be available to people outside your community?
From my understanding, no. I built the guide, but I basically gave all the rights to teas.The, so I have no hands in it now. I printed one copy for myself, but yeah, as of right now, the teas.The owns the rights to that guide, so they can do whatever they want. But they barely use the guide, and from what I know is they're not printing any extra guides to sell, which is, yeah.
To have you back at some point so you can tell us more about the No.
Oh, love to.
Okay. I'm too close to, there we go. Yeah. So, yes. Any questions from the hall? On Wadding, the mic.
Well, yeah, question. Have you tried powdered sulfur on the Monarda?
No.
As far as I know, powdered sulfur is allowed by the organic people.
Okay, I'll see. That's interesting. No, I have not tried that yet. Before I was getting my organic certification, I tried milk, spraying milk on, and worked okay. But powdered silver is an interesting. If it helps me save my bee balm, it's definitely worth a try. I'll have to look into that. Thank you for the suggestion. Yeah. Generally, once I see a little bit of mold, then I just kind of give up on that plant. I don't want to be risking selling different kinds of mold or getting anybody sick. So,
Hi, Denise Hyssop. I just planted some native plants in my garden this year. And I was wondering, do you use the flowers or do you use the lovely anise smelling leaves?
that's a good question. So generally, if the flowers are really pretty on the plants, I'll use the flowers. I know a lot of people say it affects the quality of the leaf once the plant has flowered, and that's often true. However, I think people do enjoy buying like my bags of tea and seeing that it has a bunch of purple flowers from the anise or the red flowers from the bee balm or anything. So when things have really nice flowers like the anise does, I usually keep the flowers and just add the flowers and the leaves together. And it turns the liquor of the tea a really nice color too as well. So I keep it almost like purplish. So yeah, you generally use both.
Hi. I actually stung myself with some stinging nettle a couple of years ago. And I'm curious to know, what are the medicinal properties of your nettle leaf tea?
Okay, well, I mean, the medicinal properties of stinging nettle is almost another like 45-minute speech from many herbalists could talk about it for that long, but generally it's what we call a nutritious herb. So it's very rich in like vitamins and more so minerals than anything. It actually has a little bit of protein in it as well, and it's something to be consuming every day because it's that healthy for you. And one maybe medicinal property that I think of right off the bat is stinging nettle helps the protein pathways of the body flow nice. So it actually helps to remove proteinish waste throughout the body. And they said this can help with things like stinging nettle and not stinging nettle, so arthritis and some issue that happens in the wrist quite often. But basically, it helps the protein pathways in the bodies and to kind of open those up. What other things can I say right off the bat? Yeah, I know a bit of nutritious, medicinal facts for each plant, but generally they're super long lists. So I don't know everything off by heart. I usually keep a book with me in case people ask.
You mentioned planting linden trees already, and I was wondering what other trees you're hoping to have in the future.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So once I can secure some funds to buy a bunch of trees, things I want to plant a lot of is black cherry, pin cherry, and choke cherry, ginkgo biloba, at least a couple ginkgo bilobas, apple. I want to start using a lot of fruits in my teas once I can. So plums, cherries, apples. You can also use the blossoms of a lot of these plants too. What are some of the other ones that I'm thinking of? So yeah, a lot of fruit trees, a few wild species. Was that viburnums? Can you make tea with viburnums? Oh yeah, high bush cranberry. Yeah, that's true. High bush cranberry. Elderberries. Elderberries I planted a lot of as well. Hawthorns is definitely a very good medicine too that I want to plant a lot of. So yeah, those would kind of be like the main ones that I'm focusing on. But as I'm sure as I go on and maybe get more opportunities or more funds to plant more stuff, I'll figure out some other teas. Yeah, those are the main ones I use. Also, you started using sumac as a tea, staghorn sumac. but there's just an abundance of it on my property already that I don't have to plant it. So I'm pretty stoked about that. Pine? Yes, so a lot of those conifers do make good teas. Generally, the only one I use is balsam fir. Well, spruce tips as well, but balsam fir, I find balsam fir has a great flavor. I do have a lot of pine on the property. I haven't made any blends yet, but I mean, it is a good source of vitamin C. But yeah, the only conifers I specifically use right now are spruce and balsam fir.
Robin, did we have any more questions online? Sometimes after the questions start in the hall, it prompts people. No? Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much indeed, Kayoki, for just a fabulous and really interesting presentation. And we have a little thank you for you.
Oh, thank you very much.
So your honorarium, of course, and we do a photo competition every year. So the card is one of our winning entries from a recent year. I'm not sure if it was last year or this year. And a couple of offerings. My husband and I make a whole bunch of jams and jellies every year.
Cool.
So
I love jams and jellies.
okay, well, there's a couple there for you to take home and enjoy. And again, thank you so much for making the trek all the way in here from, I don't know if you were coming from Chelsea or from your new location, which sounds like it's a little further away, but we really appreciate you coming to see and talk to us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's really nice to come and be here.